Today's episode is episode 181 of Unconventional Humans podcast. Today I'm joined by Caroline Grace Cassidy. Caroline's been on the podcast already before. She's an Irish film and TV actress, and she's a writer and a screenwriter. She's got 7 books, 7 novels published. On today's episode we're talking about her latest novel, which is called, it's a long title, The Unexpected Love Story of Lexi Byrne, aged 39 and a half. So I read this book, we had a conversation around this book. Enjoyed talking to Caroline about it. It's a topic that I wouldn't probably be having many conversations around if I wasn't talking to Caroline today. So it's a lot of the book is about this idea of a woman, Lexi Byrne, who finds herself at the age of 39 and a half, and she hasn't found a man yet. She hasn't conformed to societal norms, and she's holding out for, I guess you call them the one. She's holding out for an actual connection in a relationship rather than just settling for anybody. So that's what we're talking about today, talking a little bit around the process of writing the book. And I think at one stage we started talking about popularity of crime. Why is that so popular? So we just had a bit of a conversation around that as well. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed today's episode, and thanks again for listening.
Okay, so thanks for joining us today, Caroline.
Thanks for having me again, Dennis. I enjoyed our last chat immensely.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you back. You've got your newest book out today, or not today, this year, last few months, Lexi Byrne, so congrats on that. Could you just tell us maybe a little bit about the story?
Yeah, so this is my 8th novel, and I sort of wrote it during maybe 3 weeks into the first sort of lockdown. And I had a completely different idea. I was going to go a very dark story. And I just thought, do you know what? I just want to be in a pub. I just want to be in a packed pub with loads of people. I want to get on an airplane. So all the things that I couldn't do, I put into the story of Lexi. You know, it's just about physical contact. Like, she works in a really busy supermarket. You know, she's really close to her best friend. You know, she meets this guy in a really packed pub, and a stranger, and during COVID, the thoughts of being around a stranger was terrifying. So it was just complete and utter escapism for me as a writer. And I thought, well, if I'm enjoying this escapism, you know, maybe this is the way to go, and just make it a really easy, light, fun, hopefully, read.
Yeah, now do you say it, actually there is quite a stark contrast to the storyline in the book compared to what we experienced during COVID. She met Adam as well in the packed pub. And just before we start, actually, with the dark story, do you have a storyline in mind, or that you were going to go down?
I was going to write a story about a lonely woman in her 40s and what that real life is like, because I would have a lot of friends who are lonely in their 40s, and they don't want to do Tinder, and they don't want to do all these, you know, how you're supposed to, they want to go into a bar and meet a guy, because they're all heterosexual. If they weren't, they'd go meet a girl, but that's all they want to do. And it's like, that world isn't really here anymore. So it's trying to find, I was going to write a story about a woman who's sort of lonely and can't really find her place in the new world that is all apps and all, you know, this is how you sort of meet somebody. And yeah, that was the road I was going to go down. And I had a couple of chapters written about her, and she was called Lexi Byrne as well, but she was very, very different and very insular, and not sure really that she was ever going to have anybody bar her cat, because the cat stayed in the book, but that she was ever really going to have anything other than a pet for company. And that was the route it was going. And then COVID hit, so I changed it.
That's interesting, because that is the polar opposite in many ways to what you wrote, but it's the same crux around a woman approaching her 40s. Well, Lexi's approaching her 40s, and this dilemma of being single in your 40s and what that means about yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fat because, you know, I'm in my 40s now, you know, and I'm not single, but I have a lot of friends who are single, you know, and like I just said there, it's a completely different world to what I knew, you know, as a dating world, or as how you went out and met somebody. And, you know, one friend in particular who'd been in New York for 15 years and came back here thinking in her kind of at 33, 34, maybe thinking, oh, I'm going to meet somebody and I want to be in Ireland. I want to bring my kids up in Ireland. And she's looking at schools and, like just mapping out her life. And then you come back and you just don't meet anybody. And then suddenly it's like, oh, shit, really? I had the schools picked and I knew where they were going to get, and so I think women, not generalized, but a lot of women, I think, do think a little bit further ahead, because we are the procreators, we are the ones who do give birth and who do have to think about the timing around all that. And now, because, we finish school at 18, which is actually your prime years to be having children, but, thank goodness we don't because it is too young. But, you work for a lot of years and you're in college for so many years. And then when the time is right, sometimes it's just too late, So I wanted to kind of explore that as well, and why, why society, why women are in this situation that we're in, where, we're expected to work, and then 39 comes, oh, get a man, oh, have a baby, and you're waiting your whole life not to get pregnant, and then you've only got such a short time then, not just to have a baby, but to find a life partner. And I just think it's unfair that we're supposed to find a life partner so quickly and it's all because of your biological clock, and it's because society, we were putting all these boxes, and I don't know, I'm just very interested in women around this age.
Yeah, it is interesting. Like the woman there who's like planning everything that's actually within your control, and you're missing that one vital fundamental piece that's completely outside your control. And I suppose this book in some ways, well, delves into that, the fact that Lexi, she decided she wasn't just going to settle for anybody. I think that would make it a bit more controllable if you were willing to settle for anybody. But if you put it out there and you're like, I'm not going to settle, there's a certain element of that that's very outside your control, and you have to make peace with the fact you mightn't find that person.
Absolutely. And I think, so the Anne-Marie character, who's Lexi's best friend, is there to kind of to show the other side of it. So, Anne-Marie is 42 now and has just met somebody and is desperately trying for a baby. Like, it consumes her every waking thought. Whereas Lexi, she assumed she'd probably have kids, but she hasn't. And it's not that, she's not craving children at all. I think because she doesn't have that inner want that Anne-Marie does. I did write Anne-Marie purposely to kind of settle for a guy, but that's okay. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with that. They're two people who want the same thing. They kind of want to get married and have companionship and bring up children, but they don't have that. They didn't have that, just amazing chemistry that Lexi is able to hold out for, because she doesn't have this primal need to have children. So she's happy on her own. She's got a great social life. She's a job she really likes. So she's got everything. So why just go and, marry the next available guy because society kind of says you should, so she's not going to do that.
It's funny, at the same time, like Lexi's primal need wasn't to have a baby, but it was to meet somebody where there was chemistry there. But then Anne-Marie's primal need was to have a baby, so she had that struggle then to actually try and make something happen. Again, there's only a certain amount you can control there. There's a lot of things you can do, but it's not up to you at the end of the day either.
No, and also, again, it's this, I would have a lot of friends who've gone through IVF, but it's this case that time runs out on women. We don't see it. You're just expected to do all these brilliant things and have the brilliant career, and don't, sit at home and go and work. And then suddenly it's like, there's no time left. So you're going down all these routes of IVF and whatever. And then because there's not enough time, it becomes all encompassing, because it's tick, 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 tick. I'm 41, I'm 42, I'm 43. Oh my God, it's never gonna. And there's panic ensues, and that panic ensues either because you haven't got the man to be the father, or you haven't got the ovaries left. But men don't suffer this 40-something crisis in the same way that women do, for sure.
Yeah, there is biology there, right? For the woman, it's more there's more weight on. I do feel like men struggle depending on their awareness around what they're hearing and listening to day in the culture around them, or who they're around as well, comparing them to their friends and that type of thing,
I mean, no, Dennis, don't get me wrong. I think absolutely they do, but I just think that the primal knowledge that you are the person that has to be able to give birth and to conceive like men can conceive into their 60s and 70s. So that part, isn't there for the man as much as it is for women at that age. And they don't get asked, oh, you're 42, like as if, time has completely run out for you. That's not a case for the man. So I think for some women who have had that picture in their head all their lives of the husband and the picket fence and going on holidays to Nurka with the kids and blah, 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 when that suddenly becomes, that's probably not going to happen. You're probably not going to have a baby. Then it's when I mean, I have friends who've done 13 rounds of IVF, which is not only really dangerous, it's taken every penny they have. It's all they think about, all they talk about, and it's dreadfully sad. But if somebody had, if they'd really sat down in their late 20s and gone, this is how much you are going to want to have a baby. This is what your life is going to be consumed by. You're going to be going to Turkey, to Lithuania, to, to all the, I think women might just think a bit differently about how they sort of live and not wait until sort of 38, 39 to try and see if they can conceive.
What do you think is stopping people from having conversations earlier on? Is it a lack of maturity and foresight, or is it just the culture isn't that way inclined? Or
I think like we don't see women here really having babies in their 20s anymore. Very, very, very few, really very few. So, you finish in college in your 20s, you're studying, then you're going into the workplace and you're working. And I think we just have this idea that around 35, 36 is when you should start to settle down. But biologically, that's really tough for a woman. Like their primitive years or your primary years to have a child are probably 18 to 24 or 5. Like physically, that's the time. And I'm not saying that that's right because, I think it's far too young, but I just think that there should be just a bit more awareness of the later you leave it. And for some women, they don't want children at all, and that's brilliant. But, for the ones who do, and they do leave it that late, I just think it's worth having the conversation or writing about it just so, someone picks up the book and goes, geez, I'm 35, but like, I don't want kids for 5 years. You can't just say that flippantly. I don't want kids till I'm 40. Your body's old. You are older at 40 and it's very hard to conceive. So I just think the more aware we are as women that it may not happen if you leave it till 40, I suppose, was the side for the Anne-Marie character that I wanted to explore.
I suppose we have been heading into uncharted territories where it was more the norm to have children when women were younger. Now it's older, and it's very easy to assume that when I become 35 or 40, I'll just have kids like that. But I think maybe having conversations a few years ahead of time, at least that element of surprise isn't there then when something doesn't go to plan.
Little bit, like even in the Bride Squad book 2 books ago that I did, we're writing the screenplay for that. But like the girl in it, is 42 and is in full-blown menopause. And she just went through perimenopause without even knowing that she was in perimenopause, And I think the conversation around menopause in Ireland, especially over like sort of the last 16 months, sort of 20 months, has really taken off. Joe Duffy did a show that lasted 5 days with like just thousands of women ringing in going, oh, that's what I have. No. And like just not being aware of the menopause at all. And the fact that women can go into again, just to tie into I'll wait till I'm like late 30s, early 40s to have kids. Women go into menopause in early 40s, they do. But again, it's not talked about. We rarely, talk about perimenopause, which can happen to women in the late 20s and 30s. So again, it's just trying to just talking about it, I suppose, just the more that the conversation is written in a fictional book or it's talked about in the radio, I just think the more we are educated as women about our bodies, the better.
Just coming back, I suppose, to Lexi there, I suppose another thing that was quite interesting was that because she didn't have this emphasis on having a child being the most important thing, she had a flexibility around Adam having a stepchild that mightn't be there so much in a person who's adamant that they want their first child to be their own. So that was interesting as well.
It's a funny one, my sister had married somebody who had a child, so I was always very aware of, how women react to women, because it was my sister, but to other people's children. So yeah, it's very interesting you bring that up because it happens more and more now because we're all marrying sort of later and later, this idea of the blended family or, just different to what our traditional family were. So I think, to answer your question, I think had Lexi had a kid, I don't know, I just feel now that women in their 40s or coming to the 40s, meeting guys, it's not a shock if they have previous marriage, if they have children. You know, I think it's kind of almost, if you ask someone, have you got kids? And they say no, it's almost like, oh, I got out of that one. Yeah. But it certainly isn't an easy thing to go into a relationship with somebody who has a child. You know, it's not. It's difficult. And especially then if you have your own child, because, you know, as you say, it's not biologically and physically your child. You can love the child and do everything, but there's always going to be that dynamic that, you know, if you have your own child, that you're not the actual mother. But whereas like Lexi, if you go into a relationship and it's just, you know, him who has a child, I think that relationship becomes very different, because you can be much more maternal in a fuller scale if you don't have any other children of your own, and have a fantastic relationship with the child.
Yeah. You know, it's an interesting dynamics. It's different decisions. I suppose really getting clear on what you value yourself as well, maybe beforehand, can help with these things, because I've often found when I haven't thought about these things, opportunities kind of present themselves and you're kind of caught in two minds. And you're like, don't really know how I feel about this. But by having these discussions beforehand, you can get clear on like what. So like that, for example, does it matter to you that if you did meet somebody who there's great chemistry there, that they had a child, are you willing to take that as something that maybe, don't think the word compromise is, in a way it is a compromise. Like if you have it in your head,
you're not getting the full,
yeah. And are you willing to compromise that? I think if you thought about that beforehand, it would actually help you when the opportunity comes up then.
Well, absolutely. I mean, yeah, that's the thing, you know, and in the book, she's looking for this dream man. And funny, you know, I should have put that in there, but, you know, she doesn't ever think about him having anything other than just being free and being fabulous and her wanting everything. But I think, you know, when she meets this guy who chemistry, you know, it's complete and utter chemistry, which is what she wanted, which is fair enough. You know, I think you can, you know, I've never tried to write the book that's going to last forever. But I think it's what she needed to sort of ignite this relationship, was that idea that, oh my God, you know, because she's such a movie buff and, you know, she's lived her life watching these really romantic movies. But, you know, so when she does meet Adam and she goes, you know, across the pond, think it's going to be a great weekend, you know, he's just got this awful baggage all around him. You know, he's got an ex-wife who wants him back. He's got like, he lives in a really small village, so everybody knows his every move. And you know what it's like when somebody knows everything about the person you're with, but you've only just met them and you don't know their name. So I did try and pile all that on, because in real life, that's kind of how those things happen. If you meet somebody on one night and you go off to meet them, and you know, they have a life, you know, they also have baggage that's been left there. But I just like the idea of also her falling in love. She had been cheated on in the past, you know, but I like the idea of her falling in love with someone who was also had cheated in the past, you know, something that she would have thought, I would never, you know, be with a guy who cheated. So when he sort of turns around and says to her, well, look, I had an affair and that's why my marriage broke up, I think what it does is it sort of showed her that there is no such thing as the perfect man. Do you know, like, it's not, even though in her head, everything else, the way she met him and he hit her with a door and it was so serendipitous, and, you know, and then she kind of really strips away and she's, yeah, he's not perfect at all, but he's perfect for me.
Yeah. But the other thing I found interesting was that he lives in England. They met in Ireland. Like, there's some people, probably myself included, if I meet somebody and I realize that they're living in a different country, it kind of cuts me off from entertaining the fact that there'd be something here. Was that intentional that you wrote it like that?
Very much so, because like that, you know, I've a lot of friends who are single, and my God, you put the smallest deterrent in their way and they will give you the excuse why, like, they shouldn't see them again. Oh, he had brown shoes on. I'm like, you know, all these silly things. And again, I wanted to delve into what a relationship kind of is. Do you have to live in the same house, first of all? Do you have to live in the same, you know, county? Do you have to live in the same country? You know, because you don't. All relationships can be completely, like, I have two other friends who I know, and I'd say they see each other once every 3 months, and they're together 7 years, and they have the most fantastic relationship. He's a cameraman, so he's always away shooting stuff, and she's based here. But there was one friend of mine who had met this guy on holiday, and like that, she came back, she said, there's no point, like he lives in Belfast. I was like, it's 2 hours up the road. Like, no, but like, it wouldn't work. Oh, God. So, you know, Lexi says to Adam sort of near the end, you know, she was like, I don't want this typical relationship. I just want to see you whenever I can see you, you know, so it's so fluid and there's no rules, you know, it doesn't have to be, you know, you can just sort of make your own rules. And I think also it makes it exciting and
living in the moment more as well.
Yeah, but just living in the moment and just enjoying the person while you're with them, rather than thinking, oh, that's not how a relationship works. Like, we're supposed to go see each other every day, and we're supposed to have dinner together, and we're supposed to, you know, like, it doesn't matter. I just think, you know, all these boxes that people feel that they need to take, like my friend meeting that guy in Belfast, for God's sake, see him once every 3 weeks and, you know, go away and for a weekend or do whatever. You know, it's about the person. It shouldn't be about the geography of the relationship.
Yeah, I think all those compartmentalizations we have in our mind about a relationship, it actually gets in the way of connection with that person.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, you know, like you're saying there, you know, you meet somebody and, you know, they're from wherever, and you just immediately go, oh, it's not going to work. That's not you saying that. That's society, you know, in your head telling you, oh, like, what would my mom say if I was going out with a fella from Finland? Like, I'm never going to, you know, but like, we live in a different world. Look at us, right? We're talking now. You may as well be sitting beside me. Now, obviously, I know the physical, you know, to actually see somebody there, but it's still a pretty darn good way of being able to communicate. And then when you do physically get to meet each other, it's even better. Like, you know, it's fantastic. But I don't think we give ourselves enough opportunity to meet people, because we put all these barriers up immediately and go, oh, that won't work, without ever trying it. And like I said to you, like that couple that I know, honestly, Dennis, they've one of the best relationships I've ever come across, and they very rarely physically see each other, you know. So that's what went, like, actually there was a part of that book where I was going to end the relationship with Lexi and Adam and just leave it, you know, and it had just run its course over the weekend, and she kind of accepted that there was too much going on, you know. But now that we're talking about this, how we put obstacles up, I just thought, no, because it's the wrong message to give out to people then. You know, if you really like somebody, you'll make it work. You know, you should, because it's very, like, Lexi's waited 40 years to try and meet somebody who she felt this connection with, through humor, through everything, just how they both think and act. And, you know, it isn't easy to meet somebody who you sort of feel that connected to. So when I sort of played with it in my head, I said, no, I think they should make it work, but in their own terms, you know. And the end of the book, sort of, they haven't seen each other in 6 months. You know, I purposely did, you know, 6 months later, whatever. And it's Christmas and they're going to see each other again. But, you know, they've been talking all the time, and they've just been living their own lives as well. You know, I think it's different, obviously, if you're very young and they'd had younger children and all that. But that's not how this relationship was. It's an older relationship. It's a more mature relationship. And, you know, it's two people who both kind of just really want to see each other on whatever terms they can.
Yeah. Well, the good thing about it, like more unconventional relationships, is that, you know, the people in the relationship have put a lot of conscious thought into how does this actually work, and they also pay attention to connection, the feeling, like there has to be an awareness of like connection there, if you're willing to compromise on things that like your culture or where you grew up said you shouldn't compromise on, and you shouldn't even think about. Because the other thing I found interesting, I suppose, with her going to England, was that Anne-Marie was saying, like, giving the vibe that she's being desperate, and that can put doubts in your mind, and especially when she was actually holding out for the one she connects with, she was the opposite of desperate in her own mind. So what I found interesting was how she went to England despite, I suppose, somebody who's really close to her putting that sort of level of doubt in your mind.
Yeah. And, you know, I interesting, because I think, you know, Anne-Marie can come across as a bit jealous there, but she's not, like, you know, I mean, if anybody sort of said to me, well, listen, I met a guy in Stag's Head on Friday night and going over to see him, you would immediately be like, you know, you don't really know him. So, you know, yeah. So I think Lexi was just willing to take this risk. She felt that connection, like there's that word again that you've used, connection, that I think when you really feel it, I think there's a trust there, an automatic trust with somebody when you really, really feel this connection, because it's a guttural thing, it's in your gut. So it's not like just meeting some guy and it's whatever. Like, this is eye contact. This was, a meeting of minds. So, when Anne-Marie says, it's kind of desperate, it hurts her for sure. It's like, because they do end up having a fight later on. It comes back and it doesn't leave Lexi's head. But I just think she knows herself how she feels, and she trusts herself that actually this isn't being desperate at all. This is someone who I think I could have something really special with.
Yeah. No, I did feel like it was coming from worry. And then I found it was good, because I would imagine that would be what a lot of close relationships would be like. Initially, you have that worry that this person could be going off meeting somebody that they don't know. And I suppose it gets you second guessing, was that connection real or was it imaginary? Imagining all this stuff, or was it actually real? Was there substance behind it?
Yeah. And again, I suppose, you do have to throw caution to the wind a little bit when you're, when it's something like something that exciting and that, raw and new, and because you can't tell exactly who another person is, but like you can trust your gut and kind of, really just feel, I think that, when you just meet them for the first time and you just kind of get them, like, that they're decent people and that, you're not in danger, I think, and even though, yes, it's risky. Well, is it really? I mean, they were going to a hotel the first night, so not particularly, as you could kind of suss them out, but she was going regardless, I suppose, is Lexi's problem. So yeah, I think she's nearly 40 and she was just willing to risk it,
Well, the thing is, it's as risky as going on a date on Tinder, like, and that's become acceptable today.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's people every night of the week who sit down in a restaurant and have never, seen the person before in their life. They know nothing about their background apart from what you've been told on this, which is, God knows what the hell that is. And even like who you're meeting sometimes, I've been told, they don't look like the person who you think that you're meeting. So I mean, a lot of Tinder is so based on lies, whereas I think when you meet somebody in the flesh and they're just there, it's just, it's banter and it's real, and you're not. I think with Tinder sometimes everyone's just trying to be somebody else, or the best version of themselves or the fakest version of themselves. And I think with Lexi, like, by meeting somebody in a bar, and actually having a connection with them was too good to sort of pass up. So yeah, she just said, I'll go for it.
Yeah, that's a good message. And I suppose, practically, in terms of writing the book, how long did it take you to write the book?
I suppose I wrote it in about 6 months, I'd say, but I spent a long time editing it because we're locked down and we had a lot of time to edit it. So the chapters are very short, purposely, because I wanted it to feel very pacey. So like some chapters, are only like a couple of pages, and I sort of titled every chapter with a romantic movie of some description. But
why did you go with that? What was the draw to
I just think for me, I watched Dirty Dancing about 9 million times when I was 16. So, I kind of got, when you're that age and someone like Johnny Castle comes on screen, you're so young and you're just learning about love and romance. And it did floor me, for years we'd go like 2 or 3 times to the cinema to see it. But I was the impact that films have on younger women and how that trains their brain to what they think they want in a man.
Well, that ties to Lexi too, doesn't it? As in, like, she has this romanticized idea.
She has this, she has a romantic connection to Johnny Castle as well from Dirty Dancing. But it's just, there's a scene in Dirty Dancing where they finally dance, and like it's the Latin music, and it's, the visceral chemistry, and it's just fantastic chemistry on screen. But when you watch that as a 16-year-old and you're waiting for it, it very rarely, happens. And, so that's why I have all the movie titles, like About Last Night and Dangerous Liaisons, and, all these just very powerful connective movies with the female and male lead. And everything, there has to be a part of the chapter that links into that particular film.
I was going to say, did you write the chapter and then think about the title that connects with the chapter?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I wrote the chapter first, and then I go back and think what could be, like about last night obviously comes pretty easy because, she's telling Anne-Marie the next day about last night. But so there was a lot, believe it or not, of research that went into try to find the exact films, that would, if you were really a fan of the films, you would see why it was a chapter.
Okay.
Then obviously Dirty Dancing is the last film and the last chapter because she actually gets to do her baby dance with Johnny on the floor of the Meritz Hotel at the very end, which is like her dream come true,
Yeah.
And it's a little bit of a nod and a wink and a, just to the readers who love Dirty Dancing, if you did love Dirty Dancing, you totally get that kind of the ending, and it's so schmaltzy, and it's just so dreamy, I suppose.
Would your core audience get those connections in, I guess, is it?
Well, I had this battle with my editor all the way through because I had a dozen more Dirty Dancing references in there. She's just like, I never seen the film, I just don't get it. I was going, I know, but I want people who read it to get, I want people who love Dirty Dancing. But it's not a big enough audience, and not many people have seen it. So yeah, that was a battle. If I had my way, it would have been way more very niche towards that market. But no, I couldn't. I had to take out a lot of the kind of one-liners and the, see in an early version of Lexi, she was absolutely obsessed with the film in like a kind of in a weird way. So I had to kind of go back and just make it a bit more fun loving. But yeah, I mean, you run the risk of isolating readers at times when you mention any film or book or TV series. And like I have something in that book about Cagney and Lacey, and again, there's like nobody will have heard of Cagney and Lacey, but I'm going, well, some people might, and I'm keeping it, but mostly your editor will try and get you to take out any references to stuff like that because they are personal, I suppose. But I think people who read my books are very like me and think the way I think, and kind of, like all the messages I've got, been like, oh my God, I love Dirty Dancing. Oh my God, it was so I did connect with that kind of Dirty Dancing audience,
I suppose the interesting dance between you and the editor, is it? Like considering what can be taken out and what you wouldn't want taken out.
Like early on, I would just be like, yeah. And now I'm like, no. So it's, yeah.
Is that because you've a body of work behind you now that you've got more leverage?
Yeah, I think you feel that you trust yourself a bit more, whereas the beginning you don't trust yourself, and you're always, I think every writer has imposter syndrome in some way, shape or form. I think all of us, Marion Keyes, everybody, Marion Keyes say, oh God, this is so bad. So, it does take ages to kind of trust yourself to go, no, actually, I can write, I can do okay, and try and get your editor to trust you as well. But at the end of the day, like they are looking out for those kind of things. I'm saying to specifically take out, anything that you think a reader might not like or might not have seen, or might not have heard. And, like the music, there's some music in it as well. And we fought a lot at the end because they danced to The Time of Your Life, which is the last song in Dirty Dancing. And I had got permissions for like a good chunk of the lyrics. She's like, but nobody knows what this song is. Like, so I end up only getting like, now I've had the time of my life and I owe it all to you. And I had got loads more in it. So that was a big battle. But then I had to sit back and go, okay, imagine it's the end of the book and you really don't know that song, because it was so personal to me. So she won that one and I took that out.
So it's kind of a lesson too. And I suppose it's not about the writer, it's about the work you produce. Is it?
Yeah. I mean, I think the more work you put out there, the more personal it actually becomes, funnily enough, because I think in the early days when you're writing, and I say this to people who want to write and would ask me how you write, you don't really think anyone's going to read it. You just think, I'm going to write it and put it in a drawer. And then when you do get it published, it's like, oh, but then as you go on, you're so aware that the public are going to read your work. So you become a very different writer, because at the beginning, it's much more introverted. It's much more personal. And the dream and the hope is that, oh, imagine I got published and people could read it, but you don't really, but you're writing for yourself. You're not writing with that awareness really. Whereas when you actually have a contract and you know that book is going to appear on a shelf in Easton's and Dubray and wherever, then you kind of connect as you're writing the piece, you will connect better with your audience because you know. That's why sometimes I have so much admiration for people who write and don't either self-publish, they just put it away, because it becomes very hard when you just feel you're the only person who's going to read, know the story, when you know there aren't people waiting out there to read it. That can be difficult, I think.
Do you think the awareness builds over time? I think you could start off as a writer and you don't really have this general awareness of how other people think or how they could potentially perceive what you're saying. And I feel like that can be where you don't really even get the choice for it not to be personal, because you don't really have that much perspectives maybe on how other people might be reading it to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, you're freer for sure. And like, there is something very liberating about writing and just thinking that nobody's going to read it, because you can say and do pretty much whatever you want. There's no expectations on you. It's just you and the novel, I suppose, or in the book. But there's a drive that kind of comes in as a writer when people are waiting to buy your book. I think there's a certain drive that just makes you write faster, but also maybe it's because now I've written so many, but you start to, with the feedback from other books, you start to, your audience, I think, and you kind of know, like, I think we talked about this the last time on my fourth novel. I just wrote this really dark novel called Already Taken, about this girl and her sister was dying, and it was really dark. But like, a lot of the feedback I got was like, oh, that wasn't a Caroline Grace Cassidy book, so it's, and you can either be very snobby about it and say, oh, that's my book and da da da. But if you're clever and you want to keep your audience in your market, you go, yeah, actually that wasn't, that's not what I suppose I'm selling as a brand, And it's funny, there was we were talking about women's fiction in this genre the other day, because so many friends and colleagues have put books out over the last kind of 4 months and they've all just died, like, and not apart from, not even to do with COVID, but we're kind of coming up with this theory now that women, mainly women, are buying crime like never before. Like, women used to buy sort of middle of the road, like women who'd buy my stuff, fiction, heartbreak books, but now it just seems to be really light reading, like what Lexi Byrne is, bit of fun, bit of chemistry, put it down, skip away from all the heartbreak stuff, skip all over that to crime. They seem to be the two
polar opposites.
Yeah. But when I started out, women bought, like, crime would just, there wasn't half as much of it, and there certainly weren't as many female crime writers as there are now. I think I could count on one hand. I think it was Patricia Cornwell. But now you've Liz Nugent, you've Catherine Howard, you've Patricia Gibney, you've like, there's so many. So it's just, I think the fiction genre that it used to be here is, the market's gone teeny tiny.
Do you have any ideas on why that's happening, with why women are getting more interested in crime?
I wish I knew. I don't know. It's macabre. I really don't know why. But like, even when I was going around signing my books, and 56 Days, which is a crime novel that's sitting there waiting to read it, but Catherine's a fabulous writer, and women were just grabbing them, like grabbing. It's like, I don't know where this Irish compulsion to read crime came from. I mean, I honestly don't. It's bizarre. Do you?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I've never massively been drawn to it. I know there's an interview with Ian Bailey tonight, which would be quite interesting. But normally I wouldn't. I don't think I watched the series about that murder, but I have noticed that there are a lot of people that are interested in that. Even at times, I would be,
all the podcasts about, like, I have friends recommendation podcasts, they're all giving me murder ones. I'm like, I don't want to listen to murder. I just like, yeah, and these are all my female friends. Like, oh, have you listened to this one? Kill my killy friend, kill, whatever. Like, it's just all about killing. I'm like, no, Jesus.
In saying
girls.
that, I'd watch things all right every now and again, but I wouldn't say it's something that I have a real fascination with.
No.
I'd have a fascination to the extent that I suppose you get inside the mind of a reality that you wouldn't want to live out, but you'd like to get a glimpse of. Jesus, that's a potential reality, I guess.
I mean, I don't know. Does it speak about the world now, the world we live in, that there's obviously so much crime and so much murder that there's the stories are there, even the documentaries, I mean, like the real life stuff, and then that triggers the imagination of the writers. I don't know, but it's certainly a massive market.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Bizarre. Yeah, I don't know.
Always things I don't understand.
A lot of female writers that I know, like everyone's trying to do it now. You know, everyone's just like, I'm just gonna write crime. So
I imagine it's not one of those things that you could just lightly just recreate or something.
I mean, I know like Claire, for example, who had been like me, women's fiction. She just went over. She's knocked out her 5th now, and they're like selling amazingly well. And Anna McPartland's writing one. Yes, so I mean, obviously. Maybe women are just all mad.
Maybe we're all mad in some ways. Well, the other thing is that I suppose it does give you a medium to express this madness within you without actually acting on it in real life. Yeah.
True, very true. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. It freaks me. Like I couldn't read that going to bed now. It would just be like, woof. But obviously people. But see, that's the other thing. You know, people are just reading it as entertainment. You know,
it's escapism as well. Like a lot of it's escapism.
It's very, I don't know. For me, I couldn't find that I couldn't switch off by reading.
Well, the other thing it could be is that I suppose our lives are so routine that's chaos. That's the opposite of routine is crime and things where like all the fantasies and delusions are like let run riot. I think that when you're living a life that's so routine and mundane, there's an aspect of within you that longs for something different, and it's a way of, I suppose, expressing that. I suppose
you must be right. I mean, yeah, you must hit the nail on the head there. That's exactly what it has to be, because it's so popular, and it's not like you can see any other reason for it other than this is just something so different and so unlike me or my life. Or like there's a thing on Netflix we watched last week called The Boarding House Murders. Halfway through it, I said, I have to turn this off. This is horrific. Like, it's just really gruesome. And, I don't know. And then I'm not a big fan of promoting murder and like promoting as in just putting it out there so much. Like, there's so much on Netflix that is about murder and women, especially women being murdered. And I don't know. I think in years to come, we'll look back at this sort of generation of this obsession with the macabre and with murders, and we'll realize that, it wasn't the cleverest thing to do. It doesn't sit great with me. Not so much the novels, just the amount of stuff on Netflix about, murders.
So the other thing I was kind of exploring was the idea of death, as in, I think when you don't entertain the fact that you're not immortal, that you don't actually live your life. You don't live. You get into this routine of putting things off that actually matter to you, not being yourself when you could be yourself with a bit more bravery. And I think that you're living in a society that anytime death comes up, it's seen as morbid. So you can't really talk about it in a way that's actually healthy. And I feel like there's two extremes where you can obsess about death, or you can not think about it. Either way, you're not fully living. You're not fully being alive and living the life you want to live.
Very interesting. Yeah, no, that is very interesting. I mean, yeah, I think you're right. I think you have to accept life for what it is, and accept what's to come, and not try and, pardon the pun, but bury your head in the sand. Do you know what I mean? And that's the healthy way to live, I suppose, is be in the moment. And like you say, don't put everything off, or don't be afraid to do this but it's not that easy to live in the moment all the time. You have
to feel all the raw emotions and stuff. And
you do, and I think especially coming out of COVID, the amount of people with awful anxiety and fear and the not knowing. And like I was trying to say to somebody recently, I said, well, we've never known about tomorrow. You don't know when he does know about tomorrow. But, when before COVID, it was just like, oh, I'm going on holidays in September. And then suddenly everything was moment to moment. And it was like, that was kind of really living at the time, because you're just like, well, I'm drinking tonight or I'm doing whatever, like early days when it was like something from a Hollywood movie, you really didn't know whether the world was going to implode. There was a sense of freedom in that. Yes, there was fear, but there was also an unbelievable freedom that you didn't have to be anywhere. Nobody could ask of you anything of you. You didn't have to do anything for anybody else. It was apart from your own little sort of bubble and circle. So it was certainly I found a lot of it just like, whew, like someone had just literally taken a backpack off my back and just gone, sit down there now for a few hours. Now, after a while, I wanted the backpack back on, but there was certainly a while where it just was very, very freeing.
Yeah. And fear and freedom like linked together.
Yeah. And you're faced with the fear, it's like, it was almost like being on a plane where the pilot's like, I'm not really sure why this instrument isn't working. It's like, oh, well, I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure it'll be grand, but it might not be. So you had to I remember when Veronica came out that night, a few of us just looking at each other going, that doesn't sound great, does it? Like the first generations to ever have, well, Spanish flu and whatever, but just in our lifetime to have anything so terrifying, I suppose, come our way. And I think time will also tell in the next couple of years the real impact, the real post-traumatic stress that will manifest in children who were kind of old enough to realize, and then and then the rest of us. I think there will be a big fallout from that.
There will be. But like if you look at any generation, there's always something that happens. I'm just grateful it wasn't like a world war yet.
Well, that's the other thing. Yeah, I was reading something the other night, and it was, sorry, I can't remember, but yeah, it was all. I was actually reading Maeve Binchy's Light a Penny Candle for a podcast, a Bookbirds podcast I do, but it was all set in like the 40s in the World War. You're just going, Jesus, yeah, you do, obviously you absolutely forget the horrors of that, because we had something more. We could see the impact of it, but we couldn't really feel it unless, tragically you had somebody who you lost to COVID. But other than that, I was kind of watching it from the outside and gazing in. I remember in Italy in the beginning going, oh my God. But we still had our comforts and our food and our fire and our wine and we'd all those things. Whereas, the likes of war is very different. Yeah.
So have you started writing a 10th book now, or where do you see your writing going from here?
I haven't. So I'm still working on a screenplay with my fellow writer, Lisa Carey, that we wrote the Bride Squad book. So we've been on that now. We're working with a production company, and we've been sort of rewriting and writing the last sort of 8 months on that, it's such a different beast.
I was going to ask you, what's it like writing screenplay? Like, what's the big difference you see between writing a novel and screenplay?
So different, Dennis. It's just so minute, everything. It's like a regular screenplay, I suppose, nowadays about 95 to 100 pages, right? So that's take Bride Squad as a novel, which was say 320 pages. So you've got to condense everything down, and then you're showing, not telling as much as you can. So you're trying to, in a screenplay, you write off this thing called final draft, and you'd have character and action and description. So you're trying to show as much as you can, whereas in the novel I could write 10 pages on the conversation. So it's very different in that way. And plus we're also writing like Lisa's in LA and I'm here, so we're sort of batting it back and forward, but it's coming on well. It's nearly there. So no, I haven't really thought about the next novel yet. And normally when your book comes out, you've got 2 weeks shelf space and then it's time to move on. I've been lucky. Lexi's still doing very well and it's week 4. So I think when that happens, you're kind of just sitting back still and trying to enjoy the fact that you've, something out there.
Oh, okay. And you move on after that.
Yeah.
Are you only as good as your last book, do you think? Or
Well, that's it, and they do take a long time to write and to edit and to put together, and the covers, and it's a year. It is like a good year and a half, I suppose, to get it onto the shelf. So I don't know. I suppose with me, I never put pressure on myself to say, right, you have to deliver another one. Like, I like to just sort of tip away. I'll be making a cup of tea and I'll get an idea and I'll just sit down and write. So if that happens, well and good, but I'm just not putting any pressure on myself at the moment, to try and knock out another one. I mean, I might sit down tomorrow and get a great idea, but if I don't, I'll just be waiting until I want to write something, I suppose. I'm lucky I'm at that stage now where if I don't want to do it, I don't have to do it, because I'm going contract year by year now. Because like at the beginning, like when I signed my first book deal, it was a 3-book contract. I didn't know if I could ever write another one. I'd written one, but like I honestly didn't know. And it was really real pressure now to write 3, like 1 year, so it was a lot.
How do you know when you have the second book? How do you know when it's the right fit that you want to pursue it further?
It's hard. I don't, like in the second one that I wrote, I was sitting there for days going, oh, am I going to write about it? And I think that's the worst thing. I think you need to know what you want to write about. And I've learned that, I want to write about a woman in her 40s, or I want to write about a marriage that's breaking up, or I want to, but like on my second book, I just did not know what I wanted to write about. I didn't even know if I wanted to be a writer. I just knew I'd done one. So I had to kind of just pretend I was in English class and make up a story. I had to just kind of go, remember, like when you're in English and they'd say, it was a stormy night, off you go and write your story. That was literally how The Other Side of Wonderful came about. I just ended up sitting down and just having to write it, but they're harder. And now I really want to write about what I want to write about. So it actually probably does make it easier because you're invested in the theme.
What was the biggest thing you learned about yourself from this book that you weren't aware of before you wrote the book?
That I still love Dirty Dancing.
Sure, you're aware of that for the book.
I don't know. I suppose it made me more aware of my friends who are kind of single and who would love to. There's nothing wrong with being single, by the way. That's not the point of this, but who would actually like to meet somebody and sort of share their lives with someone. Because you can be flippant about it sometimes, someone's going, I can't meet anybody. But I think it's very important for people, if they really would like to meet somebody, to be able to meet somebody. But like I'm saying to you earlier, like I have friends just will not go on Tinder and will not go on whatever all those dating apps. And they haven't been to a pub in a year and a half. So I'm sort of aware of the loneliness on a different sort of scale than I might have been before. And Lexi's not lonely. Lonely is probably the wrong word. Just somebody who would really like to share their life with somebody. And it doesn't mean that you're not content or getting on grand and you're going out and you have a nice life, but you would still love somebody to just, I have a friend who says, I just love someone who wants to go to New York with me for the weekend. Because like she'd be ringing us to go out and say, I can't, the kids, or, there isn't, when you're 20 and 30, there's always someone to go out with. But I think when you hit your 40s, they become smaller and smaller. And then it gets to a stage where, well, there's no one to go out with on a Tuesday night at 9 o'clock because, most of my friends have kids and they're all in bed now. And so it's just, I suppose I've become a bit more aware of people who really do want to meet people and who can't.
Yeah, that's funny you said that. Actually, I think you can actually be happy in yourself and quite content with your life, but you want to share it. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you can either be somebody who's lonely or somebody who's very content being alone, doesn't want to meet anybody. I think there's like a middle ground where you can actually be happy and content, but you want to share that. I think what's missing is just a feeling of connection to somebody, like in that kind of more intimate way that you can't give yourself. You have to have another person to do that.
Yeah. That's exactly it. Yeah, that's exactly, I don't know what the word for that is, but yeah, that's exactly who Lexi Byrne is as well. Like there's nothing wrong with Lexi's life at all. And the fact that's kind of the reason why I said, no, she'll hold out for somebody who's who she really wants to be with, you know.
Mm.
And you know, I the theme of settling comes up a lot in this novel, you know, because Lexi, sure, Amory settled for Tom. And there is an awful lot of settling that goes on. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But that wasn't for Lexi. She doesn't want the guy, you know, she'd had a boyfriend. And, you know, I think there's a line in the book where she says, you know, she thought they'd go to like Rome and Budapest, but instead he's sitting at home in his vest. You know, that's not what she wants. She doesn't want a guy who's going to sit there and watch snooker all night. It's not enough for her. And that's okay to say that, you know, grand. Yeah, she had a man and she had a partner and she's someone to do things with, but if it's not the right person, what's the point? Yeah. You know, I think and that's why the age thing is so important in this book, because so many women just settle because time is against them.
Yeah. No, like it's a nuanced thing. No right answer, but I think it's being aware of your current situation in life and how you really feel.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's being honest with yourself, I think, and saying, you know, yeah, I could absolutely go and meet a guy tomorrow and move in with him, but I'm happy. I'm happy, but like, you know, unless it's the right person, I'm not going to do it. You know, there's no point. But you're 39 and a half, you might be able to have kids. Well, I'm not going to have kids just because you're telling me that time is running out. You know, see, this is the thing as well about kids. Kids grow up, right? Kids, you know, women say, I won't get to push the baby and the baby and the baby. The baby is only a baby for a very short time. And then the baby becomes an adult and all the responsibility that goes with that. And I do think women are getting a little bit more, they're more aware now, I think, that it's not just about having the baby, you know, it's, you know, because a lot of women say, well, I'll just have a baby on my own. It's only a baby for a couple of months, love, you know, and then it becomes a child and an adult and responsibilities, and you know, your time is taken up making sure that they're okay and going to schools and blah blah blah. That awareness, that baby, that's why I hate that word. You know, she's never gonna have a baby. That word annoys me.
The baby. Yeah, I've never really thought about that. Yeah,
the connotation of it, though, Dennis, is like, you know, it's about nursing and, you know, all this kind of really. It sounds so sweet. And so, you know, as if you're going to have the baby forever, you know, and it's not. And I think sometimes when women have babies on their own, they don't realize the work that then becomes, it's a 2-person gig a lot of the time, you know, if you can, because like I said, the baby then becomes the teenager, becomes the man, you know, becomes all these other things. So yeah, I think that's why Lexi is a bit aware that it's not just the baby.
Yeah, and you can't control, like, for a healthy relationship, you can't control the child you're having as well. And oftentimes, I think you'll be confronted with a child that has character traits that are polar opposite to you, and maybe you haven't accepted before in yourself or somebody else. And it's challenging to actually love that about that child instead of trying to contort them into something they're not. So
absolutely.
That's another thing.
Oh, completely. You know, I mean, you know, having children is not for everybody, though society will tell us that that's what women are here for, that we are supposed to have children. If you don't have children, you're not going to be a fully formed woman and you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. And what would you be without children? And then, you know, you do see some women with children and they're just, wow, what, like this is not what I thought this was going to be. You know, all consuming. It's full on. Yes, it's hugely rewarding for the vast majority of women and couples, but there's also women and couples that just did not know what they were letting themselves in for and weren't ready, you know, just didn't like different challenges that present themselves. You know, that's what I'm trying to say about the baby. You know, it's not any, you know, there's children come in all different packages and, you know, so, but don't just expect to have this lovely baby, because that's not what procreating is about. You know, I've lots of friends with lots of children with special needs and lots of difficulties. And you know, there's so much more that goes into mothering that I think that's why the conversation is interesting, that, you know, it's not just you're missing out on the little baby. That's, I suppose, my point.
Yeah, no, it's good to have these conversations. It's like, I think for any genuine reward, there's like genuine sacrifices behind it as well, that we might clearly see what the sacrifice is until we're actually in it.
Exactly. Yeah. And if there's a few people pushing to do a sequel of this book, and I've never done one. I don't know, I might, but if I do, Anne-Marie will most certainly have postpartum depression, and, you know, we'll take that down a very different road of, because a lot of the time it's like, have to get pregnant, have to get pregnant, have to get pregnant. Oh my God, I gotta get pregnant, can't get pregnant. Then the baby comes, it's like, I mean, postnatal depression is a real thing, you know, but also when you think that this thing is going to make you, it's going to complete you, it's going to, you know, that's not it at all.
I think that'd be an interesting book. And then with Lexi's family as well, there's to be challenges in that as well, like how that's going to move forward and stuff. So I think that'd be.
Just give me the title, Dennis. Just give me the title.
Actually, for this book, did you think of the title afterwards? Was it because it's a very specific title?
Well, I suppose no. I kind of knew that she was going to be nearly 40 and that she was going to meet somebody that just blew her mind. I kind of knew that going into it. I wasn't really sure how much baggage he was going to have. But I just wanted her to meet somebody who she was mad about, you know, as innocent as it sounds. Just wanted her to, you know, she's a nice person. She wants the best for everybody, you know, she's not greedy, she's not selfish, you know, she's just a genuinely nice woman who's just a bloody romantic.
That was a good book, and enjoyed reading it and having this discussion as well.
I was laughing when you said you read it. I was going, I wonder how he got on with that.
Well, it's one of those things. Push yourself outside your comfort zone. I wouldn't normally read, I suppose, romantic novels and stuff like that. But it does give me. I wouldn't have had this conversation today if I didn't read it. So, and I've learned things today that I wouldn't have learned if I didn't talk about this stuff. So,
that's good. And we never did our short film podcast.
Yeah, we should do that.
Remember we were saying we should do one of those again, chat about shorts. I was going to make one during lockdown in a lockdown pub, but I didn't feel comfortable asking crew, even though they were, you know, the way you just feel responsible for like everyone's help. It was like early on in COVID, and now I'm raped and I didn't do it. I should have, because it was a great little script, but you know, maybe another time. Yeah,
we should get you back to talk about that again.
Shortly,
soon. Cool. So thanks again, Caroline. Thanks for chatting to us today. And actually, where people find you online to get the book?
So, well, the book you can get, it's obviously on Amazon.com, but it's in Eason's. Actually, Bookstation is a great place as well. It's a little cheaper. And then I'm on Instagram, Caroline Grace Cassidy, and I'm in between leaving Twitter and coming back to Twitter because I hate it as a platform. But it's kind of necessary when you're working in something like books. But Instagram is great. So Caroline.
Is it actually a part of the contract, like with books, that you're on these social platforms to advertise it in? Or?
Oh my God, this is actually another podcast. I can't tell you.
We can talk about that some other day. I find that quite interesting as well. It is
it's like when I started writing 8 years ago to where I am now, and what you have to do now as a writer is completely. Did you have Kira Garrity on?
Well, she'll be on the next episode. I'll publish it.
So I'll let you go now. But you know, Kira, I'm okay with social media because I was an actress and I worked in TV shows, but Kira's, you know, a lot more quieter on social media. And like, you're expected now to da da da, here I am, you know. And she's just like, I can't do that. But we'll have a conversation about it again if you want. Actually, me and Kira could come on and talk to you about it. It's fascinating what you're expected to do now as a writer, and if you don't, you can see the impact that it has.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I guess it's probably easier to be found as a writer through social media, but then you've also got the flip side of that, is that you actually have a presence to be a writer, I guess, and contract with publishers and stuff. But then I suppose you go on the self-publishing route, where there's a bit more freedom.
Well, you can, but you know, like the likes of, you know, the big pub or the bookshops, you know, they like to be tagged in things now, and they like, you know, so there's all that none of that was there before. But anyway, like I say, it's another
conversation for another day. Thanks, Caroline.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. So until next time, have fun and enjoy the process.